recording for the podcast, so I'm doing an intro for the Twitch people, but now I'm going to do the podcast intro. So there'll be two intros. It'll be weird. Just you'll survive. I guarantee it. So today we're going to talk about fun farming and futurism with an old friend of mine. I haven't seen in person, either live or on video, for many years. I'm not even sure how. It has been a very long time, right? Seems like.
Yeah.
And she can introduce herself. Go right ahead.
Okay. So my name's Alysia Dynamik. I live in Reno, Nevada. I'm a mom and I'm a teacher and I have a garden and I'm also a avid maker. I do a lot of different kinds of making. I recently taught myself to silversmith, but I'm also really interested in technology. So I do stuff like I build and fly racing drones, and I work with microcontroller based electronics, usually things like LEDs, and do a lot of large scale installation art and metalworking. I don't know. It's a long list.
That's awesome. So you're clearly a multi-talented person. All skills that I don't have. So I'm going to need to ask you a million questions about all of them because those are all things I don't know anything about. But as you can see, I could use some knowledge with silversmithing. So that will be a topic of interest in particular. But now that we've introduced ourselves, well, you know who I am. I am Logan Grendel, your host and general rabble rouser. And today we're going to be talking about, as I said before, fun, futurism, and farming, and how those things tie in to the world we have now. But anyway, you have returned to the Focused on Infinity podcast. Let's talk about it. Okay, so starting off, we're going to give a little bit of backstory, just how we met, and talk about the burner party scene world and things like that. Tell us a story about how we met.
I'm pretty sure the first time that we met was when you were doing photography. Oh, I'm trying to think what party it was. Like a Halloween party, wasn't it? Wasn't it maybe you don't remember, maybe I just do. I think that was the first time we met, maybe one of the first times at least, when I had that costume with the skull and the feathers, and it was but I just remember the costume I was wearing. Yeah, I just remember the costume I was wearing because there was because I have photos from that party, and I think that might have been the first party that we met, but I'm pretty sure you took these photos of me.
I mean, that sounds like something I would do. Yeah. I actually forgot that I did photo booths for a long time. That was what I did at a lot of parties. I would just be behind the camera and have the whole setup, and somehow also party a ton. But okay. So tell us about just the burner world and the party world of New York. Basically tell us as if I'm someone that doesn't know anything about it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And basically we're going to link that to just in general, the growth of personal creativity and how it has led to now.
Sure. Well, oh man, that was for me, just a huge change, a time of a ton of change in my life. I kind of went to Burning Man and didn't know too much about it before I went. I kind of went on a lark and it blew my mind, and I came home and immediately kind of threw myself into the culture surrounding it. And one of the first events I ever went to that was a Burning Man event, or no, the first party in New York that I went to was the re-entry party in Times Square in 2010.
Oh,
so
I think that I probably was at that one. Yeah.
I don't know if I met you at that one. I don't recall. I don't think I met you at that party, but that was my first big Burning Man party. But a lot of people, I mean, there's probably a few thousand people, right? And that was in Times Square.
And none of them sober, not one.
Yeah, probably not. And I don't know. I just remember I was dressed as a fairy. and I went and did helped with some friends who were doing deco for a room there, and yeah, it was pretty wild. Those parties were always pretty crazy. Like we did the deco in the cuddle puddle room. And so we were hanging out in there a lot. And the thing that I don't know, like how much am I supposed to say or not say on this?
I mean, that's up to you.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not like I'm not going to say anything you're going to say. Well, because like I don't know. I guess my life is so much more tame now. I think back on these things and I'm like, oh, I'm even scandalizing myself. Like
Yeah,
I
I
just
know the
remember that
feeling.
one of the things that's very memorable to me about that particular party was that people kept having sex in the cuddle puddle rooms. They kept turning the lights on and being like,
You
can't sex
can't.
in here. That's just like one of my big memories. And also like getting up on the roof of the being up on the roof like a bunch of space pirates from like Shaggy and all them. I remember
Oh
like I was
yeah.
walking down the hallway and somebody grabbed me and like threw me in an elevator and like they're like, we found how to get out on the roof. And then we were all like up on the roof for a while and looking over the city. And then my friend had a bunch, I guess it was easy, he had a bunch of like shark costumes that were like like a sleeve you pull
Yeah,
over
yeah,
your
yeah.
body. And so a bunch of us had these shark costumes on and we were just running all through the party and everywhere we'd go, people were like, ah, sharks, like freaking out. And we were up on top of the speakers and like dancing and just like shark attack. It was just like that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool party. And then that sort of like set the tone for the following like 18 months for me. That was like my big the big party time of my whole life. Cause yeah, the New York burner party scene. I sometimes think about that, like in New York and Philly at that time, we were just having so much of that, like these really over the top, like really creative parties.
Yeah.
It was sort of like a zeitgeist in a way for that sort of thing. It felt like, I don't know if that's even the right way to put it, but
No,
if
absolutely.
I'm
That
missing
was
anything.
that was definitely like the time for that, whatever that means. And it was like I feel like everybody that we were hanging out with was kind of like coming into themselves in some way or the other, and like sort of like I don't know, really exploring
Yeah,
some part of themselves really majorly. Because the thing that I always
yeah,
love about, I mean, I never went to Burning Man proper, but I went to
right,
everything. I was like part of a couple of different crews, and I would go like to New York and to
sure,
Philly. And for me, it was a time when like just my ability, I made a bunch of outfits. I like helped make sets and design, and I did a bunch of did a bunch of photo shoots and like the photo booth, and just like generally expanded my outlook in terms of creativity. And it was really really helpful to have like a community that was like accepting, and just like where you could do basically anything you felt like doing, with the exception of have sex at those particular parties. That was a different set of parties.
yeah, yeah.
um
It was, yeah. I don't know. I think there was just so much cool stuff going on. Like recently, I watched a documentary about the whole genesis of Meow. I don't know
mhm.
if you've like they put out a documentary about it, and it just it was around the exact same time they were kind of doing all this experiential like party, but also because like so many of those parties, it wasn't just about being a party, it was about it being sort of like a living art installation,
Yeah,
like an
absolutely.
experiential art thing. And I mean, I just haven't been to anything like that to that extent. With not, I mean, not even like, I mean, aspects of Burning Man, but I don't know. It was just something interesting that was going on. And I just feel like I recently, from watching that documentary about Meow Wolf and then talking about stuff they were doing, in on the West Coast, like out west some more, those kinds of things. It seems like so many. It's interesting to me how many groups of people were sort of doing the same kind of thing around the same time
Yeah.
in different parts of the country. It was kind of just like this collective thing that was kind of happening that feels like just is not actually happening at the moment. But
Well, I
I
mean,
guess
it's
there's a lot of
definitely not happening at the moment.
definitely not now. Yeah, definitely not now, right? But I like to pretend that, like, I guess. I may be in like a bit of just like keeping my head down about the current situation, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's if you have the leisure to do that, I mean, that's certainly something. I'm a person who immerses myself pretty deeply in it because I mean, I'm intellectually pugnacious enough to just want to absorb it all and know everything that's going on, but it's a lot.
sure, sure.
And definitely have to like unplug sometimes. Um, so from there, like, what happened after you left that community and and why and what changed in your life?
I guess so. I just went through a bunch of life changes at that time. I got divorced and I moved to the West Coast. I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I lived there for like almost 5 years. And I was still pretty involved in a lot of similar stuff. Still was a still was going to Burning Man all the time and stuff like that. But there wasn't the same type of scene there. There
Yeah.
was a lot of parties and stuff, but it wasn't like the like art crew, like art scene, like
Yeah.
the same type of thing that we were doing back in New York and Philly. So
Yeah, it was
it
really we are fortunate to have lived through what I think was like a a moment. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said it was just like a thing of the zeitgeist. Like I feel like it was the point where like Burning Man started and it was just like a few people and then like all this it sort of expanded in some ways like culturally throughout the country and like especially in New York and Philly and like and out west in like some spots. But I feel like
Mhm.
around the time we're talking about is when it sort of just jumped out and it just became a year-round thing in the city and in Philly, and like the heyday of that definitely was when we were taking part of it, and like I'm very grateful for that, even though it's not a community I could see myself going back to because of just like everything I have learned about the world and about myself and about just some cultural things that I remember seeing that I look back on and I'm like, wow, I would have gone off on that person so hard if I saw them doing or saying that thing or wearing that thing, right? Um,
Sure.
so, I don't look back on it with anything other than like gratitude, essentially. Because it just like helped. Because growing up anywhere, basically, you don't encounter the type of creativity and like the amount of community surrounding it that you do. And like obviously, there's also the drugs and the massive hedonism and like all that stuff too. But it's
Mhm.
definitely easy to like couch it all as just like, oh yeah, it's all just nonsense. No, no, it's actually really, really helpful, and it really helps some people to like discover themselves and like find solace in some things about themselves that like they have not had a home for, especially if they come from like conservative areas or like conservative families and things like that, where it's like I remember the first time I went to a burner party, I walked in and I was like, I have found the fucking island of misfit toys that I've been looking for. Like all,
Yeah,
all these excellent people wearing all these like random things.
I've used that exact analogy. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania and I went to Christian school um,
Huh.
all
What
through
kind of
my
Christian school?
Quaker and Mennonite.
Oh, okay. Actually, aren't the
So
Mennonites kind of like they're kind of okay?
I don't know. I would say that more about the Quakers, to be honest.
Huh.
The Quakers can be a little bit more liberal in certain ways, but well, Mennonites. See, the thing is, the school that I went to, it was. I mean, there's a wide range, right? Like of how people live their lives in that religion, but I would say that the schools I went to tended to be a lot more like modern Christian.
Okay.
I have a lot of issues with it.
I hear you.
I I don't think that this I don't think that I don't think the influence that it had was good on me personally. And like to get like one of my best friends in high school, and she went to the Mennonite high school that I really wanted to go to,
Uh-huh.
but wouldn't send me to because it was really expensive. And so I went to public school. I started going to public schools as a ninth grader, and it was not good for me. It was not a good time. I do not remember a lot of it
Hmm.
because I think I just kind of blacked out. But um, I do remember that when I was in 11th grade, my really good friend got pregnant. She was going to the Christian school, and they made her, they told her either she had to leave the school or she had to give a presentation to the entire student body about how she ruined her life by getting pregnant. And so she
Wow, what the
chose
fuck?
to, yeah, so she chose to give the speech. So she chose to give that talk to her whole school. She ended up marrying the guy. They had a terrible relationship. They had two more kids. And she died. I think it hasn't been 10 years, but it's been more than 5 from a heroin overdose. So
Oh,
that's like the
wow.
kind of thing that
Shit, that's
you
heavy.
know,
I'm sorry. That's
to
that,
take it in a,
yeah.
sorry to take it in that direction, but,
No, no, no. It's
I mean, it
life
feels
has,
relevant.
yeah, I'm sorry. That's like,
So that's
that's
kind
rough
of like
shit.
what I like where I grew up. And just like in a very conservative, like my family is very conservative. They're good, I have a pretty good relationship with my family these days, but that wasn't always true. And it was
Same.
really not true when I knew you. It was
Yeah.
really not true when I was in that part of my life. They were really not, they really didn't approve of anything I was doing at that time.
Hmm.
Um, but it was a really good time for me personally because I really learned a lot about myself. It really opened up a lot of my um I just like I've always been very immature for my age.
Hmm.
I've always been sort of behind. So even though I was kind of in my even though I was in my 20s at that time, I mean, I was the kind of person that like was never invited to a party in high school. So I never went to a party in high school,
Yeah.
and I was a real misfit through college in a way that makes me very cringy to think back on, because I was trying very, very hard to be like a very basic, popular girl. I didn't think I would ever be popular, but like I was trying to imitate people that
I know
were.
what you mean. Yeah, like just
And
trying to
yeah,
conform. Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's like as much as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's like a
So to
pretty
like,
common experience of like trying to dim your own light to fit in, and like that's again that's one of the things that I love about
absolutely.
burner culture is that it gives you a chance to just be yourself for some people for literally the first time in their lives, and that's I think
Yeah.
pretty invaluable.
Yeah, it was for me. Like people go, "Oh, Burning Man changed my life." Like, I mean, it's like super hokey or whatever, maybe to say that, but it's like extremely, extremely true for me. Like, it
Yeah.
just changed. I never thought of myself as someone who was artistic before I went to Burning Man.
Which knowing
It's a
you is like
huge,
the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life because you're one of the most creative people like I've ever met. Like you can do all of this stuff that is like baffling to me.
well, I just spent a lot of time hating myself and trying to be someone that I wasn't. So, um,
I hear
having
that.
that experience of being accepted and having all these examples of like gender expression and sexuality and like just like what it means to be an artist, like who is an artist, who can be an artist, like that always felt so gate kept for me. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not an artsy person. I'm not. I was always so concerned. I was always like trying to shrink myself, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so that experience of being kind of brought into that culture and meeting those people, um I don't know, it just like I realized like that I didn't what I actually admired, and then I realized that if I wanted to just be that I could.
Hell yeah.
And so I
That's
did it.
awesome. Where do you live now? And like tell me about your
Sure.
you know, your current situation.
Okay, so I live in northern Nevada by Reno. I live about 20 minutes north of Reno, and I live on 40 acres of land that I own with my husband. And we have a 3-year-old son. And it's, Reno is, I guess climate wise, people always think it's like really hot because they think it's like Las Vegas. It's not like Las Vegas here. It's a high. I'm at a high elevation. I'm about 5,000 feet where I
Hmm.
am, and it's pretty harsh. You know,
Harsh
not a
how?
lot of rain, like uh,
Dry, cold, like,
dry
yeah.
and windy,
Hmm.
and it's cold in the winter and it's hot in the summer. Like, I mean, you see I'm wearing a hat. I'm cold all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
We get some snow. Not a lot, but we're an hour from Lake Tahoe. Like people know Lake Tahoe gets like 8 feet of snow. We're only an hour from there.
Hmm.
And but with the Sierra Nevadas the way they are, it's dry here and it's wet there. But people think it's really hot here because it's the desert, but actually because it's so dry, I feel like it feels way hotter when I go home to visit my family back east. And the winter here, it gets down to freezing, but it's not like a crazy winter. I think it's pretty
Okay.
mild. I think the climate here is very nice, personally. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I hear
I
you.
like the dry climate.
And you still get all the seasons, but you just
No,
don't get like a terribly hard winter.
we get all the seasons, but it's not great for growing things, which is kind of where I know we're sort of going with this, which is why I thought I should explain the climate.
Yeah, yeah. So how long is your so let me do a little bit of an intro into this. One of the reasons that I asked Alicia to join us is because she grows a lot of her own stuff. And in just how long have you been doing it? How long have you been gardening?
Just since this past year. So I got I got started like in the spring, like around April, I want to say, is when I started planting my seedlings. When I started my seeds.
Yeah,
It was probably around April.
that's
And
awesome.
that's the first time I've never really had a real garden before.
So that's even okay. I thought this was the second or third year, so that's even more excellent because, I was just comparing. So, as you all know, I have my garden, the Infinity Garden, as I call it, in my backyard, and it's a pretty small area, but I managed to, and I do it all with containers, and I'm able to produce about 85% of my fresh vegetables throughout the summer. I mean, starting like, mid spring and then until actually this year it was until almost November. I was still just like, I do harvest when hungry. So I just go out and I pluck. But
Mhm.
since you have a little more space and, you've been able to, so I figure we could kind of, because as you also know, if you've watched or listened to the podcast before, one of my goals is to get people growing food wherever they are, like literally wherever they are. And so, Alicia and I have kind of two different ends of the spectrum, me being like all city, all in
Mhm.
containers. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about your operation.
Okay, so we ended up going with having a hoop house out here. So we have
What
it's
is a
about
hoop
20
house?
by 30. Okay, good question. So a hoop house, it's like a greenhouse. Generally they're called that because it's just like a hoop shaped like supports, like horizontal supports that hold a plastic or a material, usually like a greenhouse plastic, and that's what ours is made out of. They usually are called a hoop house because they're shaped like half circles. A lot of people make them out of PVC pipe, and that's actually what I thought we would do when I proposed the idea to my partner. I said, we were talking about growing some vegetables and are starting a garden, and my best friend here has done a lot of gardening, and she's on her maybe like fourth year,
Hmm.
and she lives up here like I do in the valleys, and where it's harsher than being in the city proper because you're just more exposed.
Hmm.
We don't have like the heat island of the city. So the thing that you get here with it being the desert is like a late thaw and an early frost because it
Right.
gets so cold at night. So it might be 70 during the day, but go drop below freezing at night. So
Hmm.
um, you have to, so we have a really short growing season for that reason. So while I say I like the climate here for living here, for growing, it's pretty balls. Like it's not great. And it's, like I said, it's dry and our soil's terrible. And like it's very sandy and it's just not, there's a reason that all we have, like where I live on my property, is sage. We have just tons of like junipers. For the most part, it's
Right.
just it's pretty barren in that regard. So I said from the beginning, I really thought if I was going to try and do this, I really wanted to have the right infrastructure, because I watched my friend who lives, a mile from me as the crow flies. She had a lot of trouble last year. She did really well in town. We both lived in the city at first. And she had a garden in the city. And when she moved out here in the valleys where it's more open, between the wind blowing her stuff around, because we just get crazy wind really often, like 40-mile an hour, 50-mile an hour wind. So
do you fly a lot of kites? A lot of hang gliding, parasailing.
I would like to. I do own several kites. Yes, I really want to get into kite buggying, since you asked.
Kite buggying, what is that?
Well, it's where you use what's called like a power kite, which is just like a kite that can move you around. So I have one. I think mine is 1.2 square meters of like, and that means like the surface area. It's a parafoil style, so it's soft. So it looks a lot like it's in the same family as what you'd use for like kiteboarding or kite surfing or any of those types of like activities. But mine is much smaller than that. Those ones are like 10 square feet of surface area, stuff like that. They're nuts. They would they have to have like a ton of, traction to pull you around in the water. But when you build a kite buggy, it's basically just like a little seat that you strap into that's got like 3 wheels, maybe 4 on a wide base. So really low center of gravity, really wide, so you don't tip. And then you just like fly one of these kites, which they have these like metal bars
that
that
sounds
are
fun as hell.
Yeah, it just pulls you around. And since I live, right near the Black Rock Desert, it's a great place to kite buggy. People kite surf, and so I want to build one maybe next summer. The
Nice.
buggy.
So that's right. So we'll talk about kiteboarding.
I'm like the queen of tangents.
No, it's okay. Me too. I'll go off for like hours. So yeah. So tell us about your gardening setup. Tell us how you started and what you use, and then get into a little bit about like your yields and what you're able to grow.
So our setup is that we have a 20 by 35. Like I was saying, it's a hoop house. Ours is pretty heavy duty though. My partner's a metal fabricator by trade. So we have done a few sculptures that are made out of like 2-inch steel pipe. So we have a lot of it and we have a bender for it. So we build it out of steel pipe, and it actually isn't hoop shaped. It's arched, but that's fine. It's not that, or it's like a peak, it's like a regular roof with like a 90-degree angle, but I don't know how important that is.
The plants don't seem to mind, so
they don't care. So it's we built it has raised beds. The beds are built with wood that we reclaimed from a large Burning Man project, actually, that was going to get thrown away. And it was these huge, 1 foot by 2 foot beams. And we got a whole bunch of them. We actually based the size of the hoop house on the beams that we had to use as the raised beds. So, I actually thought it was too big, to be honest with you, when we were planning it. My partner drew it all out. I was like, this is too big. This is crazy. But now that it's built, I don't think it's too big. It's actually great. I don't necessarily know if I would want it to be any bigger, but it is a lot to keep up with. But but it's manageable for me. So honestly, this past year, because it was my first time doing this, I wanted to, and we're spending a bunch of money building the hoop house. We were able to use a lot of reclaimed materials, but there's just stuff you can't get away from spending money on, like the plastic. It's covered in we have a double layered cover on it of greenhouse plastic, and then we have a blower to inflate it in between the two layers, so that gives us some more insulation,
Oh,
and it
cool.
also makes it more durable against the wind as well.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a nice feature of it. And then the sides roll up, because in the summer, if you couldn't, and
Yeah.
we have wire mesh. Yeah, it's crazy hot in there in the summer if we didn't have the sides. I mean, right now in the winter when I go down there,
Yeah.
it's around 30 something out. Lately, it's usually in the 90s in the hoop house. So
Wow.
yeah, it stays really warm.
Are you growing through the winter season?
I am.
Oh, sweet.
I am. But so anyway, so I guess what I was getting at before was
Yeah.
that when I first started this, when I started all these seedlings in my house, I got all like these little cups for them, and I started all like I actually put it. I have kind of a small house, and we just have this weird like raised area, like platform above a hallway. I don't know what to call it, but it's kind of like a crawl space. So I did it up there. I put all my seedlings up high, and I bought a grow light, and I just put them up high. And
Hmm.
that's where I started them all in the house. And I would just like climb up on a ladder every day to water them up on our like this weird platform we have.
Yeah.
And because there's not like a lot of room in my house. Plus I have a toddler. So you kind of got to keep things out of the way.
Right.
And so I started like a lot of seedlings. I just didn't really know what I was doing. And all the seeds I used were seeds that were given to me.
Hmm.
My best friend gave me a bunch of seeds, and my little sister mailed me a bunch of seeds. And I just grew that stuff. I did buy one pack of like mixed heirloom tomato seeds. But besides that, pretty much everything I planted was just based on the fact that like people gave me the seeds. So I wasn't real picky about it, because I honestly just wasn't sure if I would like pull it off or not. When I started
Right, right.
planting the seeds, we hadn't even started building the hoop house. We were just talking about it. So,
Yeah. The first
um,
year I just got like whatever I could. I was
yeah.
volunteering at the time at this place called Harlem Grown. It's like a local community
Mhm.
farm. And they had like a bunch of plantlings that they couldn't plant, and they were like, please take these home. So I just ended up with whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And it
also I
worked
was not
out
sure about it the
fine.
first year. So
Yeah, it worked out fine. I planted a whole lot of peppers and a whole lot of tomatoes and greens, a lot of greens. I did end up buying some plants later in the season, largely because I was putting my seedlings out to harden them off as I got later in the season, and a bunch got eaten by rabbits. Like one day I put them out, and like just some rabbits must have come. It's like lousy with rabbits out here,
huh,
and we have both jackrabbits and like the regular cottontails, and
huh.
plus a lot we have a lot of like rodents. So I don't know, maybe not, maybe I'm blaming the rabbits unfairly, but I think it
Anyway,
was the rabbits. And
it's probably a coalition,
something
little rodent
happened.
coalition. They all
Yeah,
just got together and decided they were going to descend on your farm.
they did. And I did at one point lose like a whole bunch in like one fell swoop. Like I got a couple of seedlings from the agricultural extension from the university here that I ordered before before my seedlings that I planted sprouted. Because one thing that I did that I wouldn't do again, I guess,
Yeah.
is planted like a ton of stuff, and then everything came up. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I thought I wouldn't be so successful with this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had like 400 seedlings. And I was like, oh crap, what am I going to but
I
then the
feel
rabbits
that.
took care of a lot of it. And so, but
So
then I
they
didn't
were
have
doing
as
you a
much
favor.
variety as what they're
They
doing
were
for.
doing you a
Yeah, yeah.
favor. Yeah.
So then I didn't have as much of a variety as I was hoping for. So I did end up buying some plants from like Lowe's. I went one day to just buy like I had to get something else. So I just went and bought a couple of plants.
Hmm.
So what I mostly grew this summer though, I guess, was I had like 20 something, like 24, I think, tomato plants, and like maybe 20 something pepper plants. I planted a bunch of
That's a
strawberries, but I
lot.
didn't let them bloom. I planted a bunch of carrots. I grew a bunch of carrots. Grew cucumbers, squash. I had buttercup squash. and zucchini and yellow straight neck squash.
Hmm.
And they all did pretty well. Uh, what else? Like I said, a bunch of different kinds of like chard and kale.
Did you buy the soil or did you like use?
We did.
Yeah. Okay.
We bought
Yeah.
trimix soil. We just had a dump truck of it delivered to our house.
Nice.
It was pretty wild. That was one of the more expensive parts, was getting the soil. I think it was like $700.
Yeah. Same. Soil
That's what we
is
told
not.
our son that's what we spent his stimulus money on. But he didn't mind because he really likes trucks. So he,
so,
he
so
was
everyone
like,
was happy.
worth it to have a dump truck come to my house and dump an enormous pile of dirt in my yard.
That's
so
kind of hilarious.
He didn't mind. So yeah, I don't know. Am I leaving anything out in terms of what I grew? Well, so anyway, I guess you're saying yields. It was a lot. I didn't like do a very good job recording, so I don't have a lot of good data, which now
Yeah.
I'm thinking next year I'll do a better job with that.
Yeah. If you
It
get a
did
good system,
really
tell
well.
me because I do not keep
Yeah,
good records.
I know, because I did
I
the
like the
same thing
growing
as you.
stuff. Yeah.
I did the same thing. I just would go down and just be like, oh, I'm going to make this. I mean, we're vegetarians. So, well, we're, I guess, pescatarian, but we don't really eat fish or seafood unless we're like out somewhere. We don't really make it at home.
You don't eat rabbit? That seems like a missed opportunity.
I know. I do. You're going to like, see, this is why I know how to do so many things. You say that, and then my brain goes, well, I do really want to get into falconry. And I think
I
if I
was
get into
thinking you were going to
falconry,
shoot them and you're talking about a whole fucking bird.
I know. I'm
That's
crazy. I
hilarious.
can't help it. This is why I have
No,
like
that's
a
amazing.
list of skills that is like pages long because I just want to learn to do everything I can, and I do. I do learn to do a lot of just like, you can learn to do anything on the internet. I'm interested enough in falconry that I am already on all these pages, and I already have talked to a couple of falconers here in Reno. And actually, one of them reached out to me just this past fall and was like, do you want to come on our hunts this year? But I'm so conflicted
Huh.
because it's another fucking thing, I'm sorry, that I'm interested in, where the Venn diagram of like people who are like Trump supporters
I know.
and like
I know. This
it's
is
like a circle.
honestly, this is another reason that I want to like get people into this stuff because like left-leaning people, I feel like for whatever reason, I mean, to briefly go into why I think it is, partially it's because I think the left, especially the left that's in power has been captured by the like college educated sort, so people prize that sort of stuff more and less the practical skills and like the building
Yeah.
skills and the maker skills and like the farming skills, hunting, all that sort of stuff. And like I think that we need to build leftist spaces for all that stuff because yeah, I mean, like I would like to go shooting and hunting more. Like if I didn't have I do archery in my backyard, right? But like do I want to go hang out with most of the people that do that? No, I definitely
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
So
especially it's true. Like I went through this when I first started like looking into how I could get into faculty. I like started researching into it and getting linked up, and I sent some messages and whatever to people because you need to have like to be a falconer, you need to go through an apprenticeship. You like that's the way you do it. It's like old school like that. That's
yeah,
You need to have an apprenticeship for
I mean
like
I can't imagine
a
learning it
long
on your own.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, like how would you? But it's like it's something like 2 years or something. You need to find someone who's willing to be your mentor with it for a long period of time. So it's a long relationship. And like I reached out to some people, but I wasn't like ready to do it then, but I was figuring it out. It was a long time, a year, and being friends with two of them on Facebook. And I ended up like deleting one of them because they posted like I don't know. I'm like it was just so much like, oh, making liberals cry, make like all this like really
yeah,
shitty, like
yeah.
mean spirited. It's not even like I can't. I mean, we're well past the point of it being about like different political beliefs or whatever, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, both my parents are Republicans. It's like, it's not like I can't
Like,
be
gee.
in a room with someone who votes differently than me or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that it's this extremely antagonistic, like cruel attitude. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be out in like out in some nowhere with the couple of like it's going to be all these dudes
Mm-hmm.
like we're going to be saying it's already weird enough. Like I do a lot of entering into
Like
sort of
like
like
cis male
majority, if
dominated
not
special.
completely male
Yeah.
spaces. Like that's something I've just done a lot of electronics. I'm really into drones. Like drones again. Fuck, dude. It's like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
couple of friends here, and we were all in this like this one class of drone that's really small. It's called a tiny whoop, and we were in like a racing league for these little tiny drones, like an indoor
Nice.
racing league. And like the people who run it unfriended me and my friends because we posted like pro BLM stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, dude. Like it's like so it's not even the funny thing is I'm like, I don't want to be around like you racist, like shitty people if you're posting this like bootlicking shit
Yeah.
on Facebook. Like I'm like grossed out, but you're like you can't you
They are
like
also
but I'm
grossed
not
out.
even though it was just
Yeah.
like you're pushing us out for being like supporters of
Human goddamn
BLM and
rights.
stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like
It's
craziness. So it's like it's very confounding like what the right how to like proceed sometimes in these situations because it's like I don't know, I was getting tattooed and I was talking about the falconry thing came up
yeah.
and my tattoo artist was like you got to just suck it up and do it and then you can like you know help other people like
Right,
help all
right,
these like
right.
queer like non-male like
Yeah.
people become falconers and I'm like okay there's a lot of value to that perspective so I don't know I'm like I haven't written it off because I'm pretty like I don't know
I
whatever
hear
this
you.
is
No,
so
no.
far away
No.
from the
No. This is literally the point of all of it for me. Yeah. So I mean, I totally hear you. And there's just some people who I just can't hang out with.
sure
Like, you know what I mean?
absolutely
Like, it would be an exceedingly antagonistic situation, and it would just not go
absolutely
well for anyone. Like, I've got like four markers at least of my like of things that are core to my identity that like a Trump supporter, even most liberals I come it to loggerheads with because I'm against just capitalism and the corporate state writ
right.
large. You know what I mean? So yeah, I get it. But having said that, it is an interesting question for someone who is like, are you a cis woman? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for like a white cis woman to be
Yeah
able to enter those spaces and like yeah
right
you could be like a secret agent, but also it's like I would never tell someone to do that because it's fucking unpleasant to be in spaces
yeah
that are antagonistic to like to your belief systems. It's
yeah
I mean I'm sometimes fortunate that like my mom's pretty fucking conservative, and was even more so when I was younger, and like over time the relationship has gotten better. She's kind of come more. We had a great conversation actually about everything that happened yesterday, which
cool.
was like I wasn't expecting. Tangent, tell me your thoughts about what went on in Washington D.C. yesterday. Tell me what you're thinking.
Oh my god I'm just so mad about it. I don't know. I had a therapy appointment this morning and I like all I did was yell about it, but I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't say I can't believe it. Like I can believe it. It's just like
you know,
I don't know. I'm just really disgusted and I'm like I'm like staying off Facebook at the moment because it's like I can't even like stand to look at like the memes about it and stuff, like how
yeah,
it's already like
yeah.
going back to like the Burning Man thing, there's all these like memes about that guy in that hat. It's like a burner and
Oh
whatever. And I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, that
oh,
was like
it's
that
so
was the
frustrating to
Venn
me.
diagram of Burning Man and Nazism right there. That's meets in
I
that
just
dude.
I just feel like I just feel so like mad that there are memes of this guy because I'm like, he's getting exactly what he fucking wanted. Ah, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's true for now, but you know what?
yeah,
Like, and the fact that there were only 15 arrests made yesterday, like, it makes me so angry I can't even think straight. Because
yeah,
I
it's
mean, there were
horrifying.
that many arrests in like the first 10 minutes of the
Yeah,
anti-police violent protest, like
yeah,
immediately. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
but having said that, they've all doxed themselves so thoroughly that
yeah,
other people are going to, because one of the things that's happened, one of the things we've seen over this summer is people getting arrested or getting like, and I mean, I'm a police abolitionist, so like very complicated feelings about like the way to go about it. But it couldn't happen to a nicer set of people than the ones yesterday. So let's just, whatever. If we're gonna have it, let them get it,
if we're
and
gonna be, yeah, I
let
feel
them be
very
the ones in there.
similarly.
You know what I mean? Um,
I feel very similarly.
but like I mean, they were using. Like, I saw a couple of people who had pictures of themselves in the Capitol, selfies as their fucking Facebook profile pictures. Like, how? And it's partially, it's not even dumb. See, that's the thing that, like, a lot of the time people like to say that the people who were there, they were poor, they were dumb, they're like, just poor
Yeah,
uneducated people. The average
we're
hardcore Trump
not.
supporter, they have money.
Yeah,
These are like the white landowning class that feels like this is a white man's country, and we're gonna keep it a white man's country. And goddamn it, this place is going down the goddamn hellhole. We're gonna go down to that Capitol and show them what for. I tell you what. And they're the ones that can afford to have, like, they've got the tactical gear, they've got all this stuff, and it's because they have the money to afford it. And they also are educated, right? The whole idea that it's just the unwashed masses that are racist is
yeah,
just ludicrous. It's the people who, like,
yeah,
actually the workers, people who have to work next to each other, they learn to work with all kinds of people, right? It's actually
yeah,
exposure that makes you like less racist. I mean, not, and I mean, racist be, less prejudiced, let's say, right?
yeah,
Because racism
yeah,
is the systemic thing and prejudice is the personal thing, whatever. Anyway, yes, it is. I mean, it's crazy to have lived through the last year when there are just so many different days that are going to be like big historical inflection points. We lived through
yeah.
like
It's
10 of
crazy.
them in the past year.
Yeah,
And there are more to come. We're not out of the woods yet. This is not.
sure.
Anyway, so getting
Yeah,
back to farming,
it's not over.
something a little more fun. So,
So
what
you
would you
have to know.
recommend for someone who is looking to get started, and has like, a little bit more space?
Well, I mean, specific to my experience, but I think it can be applicable to a lot of people's situation would be, I think just like understanding what the challenges are going to be of your particular location, and then like starting from a place of infrastructure. I just feel like that worked super well for us, and I know I mean, not everybody's going to be able to just like build a big structure or
Right, right.
whatever, but not everybody's going to need that.
Yeah.
But just figuring out how you can set yourself up for the most success in that way. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people you can always like find the groups like Facebook groups or whatever groups in your area to kind of figure out what your particular situation is. But I mean, we just would have never had the like wild success that we've had with this garden if we'd started out kind of going, well, let's just try and like put a raised bed out and like see if it does okay. Like it just wouldn't have. It would have, so I tried to learn from like the mistakes, or I mean not mistakes, to the experiments
Yeah, yeah.
of the people that I know who live in the same area. And one thing too that helped me a lot was I put in a watering system. that's maybe not for everyone, but it's not expensive or difficult.
Tell us about it.
Particular. So I just got, a little timer, just one digital timer that screws right into your hose spigot, and then you can I just used all like the black tubing, and then the like half inch or whatever it is, polypropylene or whatever it's made out of, and then drip lines, and I just have it set up to water regularly. Right now, it's just once a day, but in the height of the summer, I had it watering every 4 hours,
Hmm.
because it's just so much evaporates out here.
Yeah.
And that was just a huge game changer for me to put that in to like get my garden really going. It was a real pain in the ass, I'll admit. But you don't really need anything special to do it. You just like I had like a little thing that poked a hole. It's like they're like $2. It's like
So just to
that's it.
kind
You
of
don't.
like for, like, so basically it's like an irrigation system, and you just
Yes.
basically took a timer, attach it to the faucet, and
Yeah.
then you have the piping, and then you put holes in the piping at various intervals along it.
Well, you put the holes to attach the thinner, what they call either like a spaghetti line, is what my friend
Okay.
who did professional irrigation called it. Like, I used a lot of ones that had the emitters built into it. I think that's really, unless you're trying to get something really specific, I think that works probably the best.
Uh-huh.
I did one bed that I did all these like built-in emitters line. It's like a 1/4 inch. And it's really cheap. And it's I don't know. There's different flow rates and different spacing, and I mean, there's a lot of ways to calculate that out. But
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be different
I
depending on what you
mean,
need to grow.
you can. I think you can go like you can get real like nerdy about it and really dial it in. But I think you can also just get those spaced emitter like the line and just like lay it out and like call it good and figure it, because I don't know. I wasn't being super like particular about my hand watering,
Yeah.
but I had a lot of trouble being consistent enough with it, and also just doing enough water. I mean,
Yeah,
especially for
yeah.
my climate.
Yeah.
For other people, some people are growing where they're getting rain and stuff. Then you don't want that. That's
Right,
that
right,
makes
right.
sense. But I would just super recommend that to anyone who like either you travel or you're busy and you just don't like it was just a lot, even though I'm at home all the time. I work from home, and so and especially with this past year, I'm not going fucking anywhere.
Yeah.
I
You and me
was
neither.
it was like no big deal to hand water it. So I guess I like that's why I'm saying is because I like resisted that for a while. I had planned to put in an irrigation system, but I was kind of like, I don't mind going down to water the garden. It's no big deal. I go
Yeah.
down there like twice a day. It's fine. I'm in there all the time anyway. And
It becomes a
but
lot
then
though.
putting that in,
Yeah.
my plants like exploded because the like consistency that provided. That I know people exist that can be consistent like that. I am not one of those
Yeah,
people. I
I
don't
hear
understand
you.
how they function. So if you are that same way, then like it's super worth the like annoying day or two. It took me like 2 days to put it in, and it was felt really annoying while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big project person, and I rarely get like I like to do it, liked doing it a lot less than I like doing most of the things that I do, putting in the irrigation. So it's just kind of a
Right.
pain in the ass. But once you get it done, it's like the best, I think. For my
Okay.
purposes, it was amazing. It
Um,
really just took it to the next level for me.
so how, like, would you say, so it seems pretty clearly that you grew enough, like, for your family, if you were only eating
Yes.
your own vegetables, and like how much above that would you say you produced? Like, were you giving
Um,
away, were you giving
yeah,
away things?
yeah.
Could you see yourself, like, is it enough that you could do a little farm stand? Like, what are we talking here?
I was definitely giving away a lot of stuff to family and friends, and I canned a ton of stuff. I like
Oh, sweet.
never canned before, but I learned how this year. So
Of
we
course you did.
actually bought a new freezer. Like we bought a little kind of a really like a I want to say it's like 6 or 9 cubic feet, but like an upright one. Whatever. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, I go into so much detail. So if I don't like rein myself in, I'm going to tell you like every spec of
Big
everything I
Virgo
bought.
energy.
Okay, so we got a little freezer. We got a small freezer. Yes, we got a small freezer that's like an auxiliary that we keep in our shed, and so I have a whole lot of just like vacuum packed vegetables in there, and then I have a whole lot of jars of all manner of sauces and
Hmm.
relish and pickles and a bunch of different anything that I could can I did.
All from this year.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, would you? I mean, have you like ever? What do you think about prepping? Is this a thing that you've ever thought about, or like, is it just you just like had so much that you just started saving it? You know what I mean?
I started getting like what could I like what would I be capable of sort of preserving at the beginning of the pandemic. It
Mm-hmm.
just kind of, it's something that's in the back of my mind all the time, although I've never been someone who's like put a lot of energy into that or like it's just something I'm aware of. I think there's a lot of value in it, even like not in a like, oh, the world's gonna collapse kind of sense. Like just it's I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to me to think about how well I could get ready for like to not have to go to the store for a long time or not have to go anywhere. I guess like when the pandemic first happened, I just when there was so much that was still unknown about where it was going and how it was spreading and like what the long range effect. I mean, I feel like there's still so many unknowns.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm the kind of personality type, and so is my partner that we were both immediately very careful. Like as soon as that all started, we just like kind of like locked ourselves down. Now,
Yeah.
granted, we're very fortunate that we have the ability to do that.
Right.
There's
Right.
definitely an
Right.
amount, a significant amount of like life circumstance and privilege that allows that. My partner is self-employed, and I at the time was not working, so I was just home with my kids. So we were really able
Like get
to
a
do
jump on
that.
it. Yeah.
So we did. And I did like one really big grocery shop and got us a bunch of just got us some of the dry goods that we use a lot of and just started growing all this food and we did really well with it. I bought practically no vegetables once we started getting vegetables. I don't think I really bought a vegetable for like, I don't know, like 5 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And we eat vegetables all like every day because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what we eat. We eat a lot of rice.
Yeah.
We eat a very basic diet. We're very like I'm really not into what's funny about all this is I don't consider myself very domestic. Like I don't really like to cook. It's like a weird conflicting thing that I'm doing with having all this like canning and whatever. I can do it when it's a project. If I make it a project for myself,
Right. Right.
I can do it. But I'm really bad at like the day to day of like, what are we going to have for dinner? I don't have any idea. Like,
I feel you
so
100%.
we eat a lot of the same things all the time to take the guesswork out of it. So we're big like beans and rice and vegetable
Yeah.
eaters. So, we were able to do really well with that. And we have chickens too. So
Oh,
we got
sweet.
chickens this year too.
Yeah.
In April, we got a dozen baby chicks and
Hmm.
raised them in the house.
Huh. In the house.
And
They're just like
yeah,
chickens ambling
it
through the
wasn't
house,
big enough.
just dropping eggs everywhere.
No, it
No,
was
I'm just joking.
we
A little
started
joke.
out they were just when they were little. We started out with like a Tupperware tub with them in the Tupperware,
Yeah.
and then they grew out of that, or like a Rubbermaid, and they grew out of that pretty quick. So I had a playpen that had been like a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down. It was like a pop-up playpen, and I like put shavings in the bottom of the
Yeah.
playpen, and they lived in the
That's
playpen for a
awesome.
long time. It was pretty cool.
Where do they live now?
You know. now they live in a coop. That
Okay.
we had a shed on our property when we bought it, and it was just really crappy, and so we kind of like we
Gussied it up.
cut the bottom off of it and lifted it up and made it into the coop, and then just built a big fence around it. But
Nice.
again, like we really were infrastructure focused with that, because we have a lot of coyotes here, and
Mm.
also like we'll get runaway dogs on our property
Yeah.
really often. So a lot of things that could
Eat a
make
chicken.
quick work of chickens.
Yeah.
So we did a pretty secure fence.
Hmm.
And so far so good. We haven't lost any of our
That's
12, and we're getting about 7 eggs a day right now.
nice. So, I mean, you're like it's. I mean, for not being a prepper, you're well on your way to being like completely self-sustainable. And
Well, I'm very interested in that. Yeah.
so
And sustainability.
that's kind of where I mean, that's largely where I come at it from myself. Because I mean, I definitely would consider myself a prepper because I'm also kind of a catastrophist and, uh,
Mhm.
you know, not just not just like because I think things are always going to be bad, but just you can look at things and be like, you know, A leads to B, B leads to C,
Yeah.
D is catastrophic, and that's going to happen, right? So,
Yeah.
and also now as we like deal with the fallout from COVID and from the economic crisis and just the all the I mean and the climate crisis, all these things are bearing down on us. So I think it behooves us to just think about things not and not just for those reasons, but also just because if we're talking about climate change and sustainability, the thing that we should all be thinking about is how do we just make our lives more sustainable? Like it's not just because we're worried about feeding ourselves, but because that is the thing to do. That's how humans used to do things. That's like the way we're supposed to be interacting with the earth is in a way that is sustainable and in a way that we're producing things and like, if we had so I was talking about I have this idea for the group the rooftop greening project of New York City where there are gardens, little small space gardens all over the city, right? And one of the biggest things that would do is it would help with rain sequestration because every time it rains now, since there's so much more water in the atmosphere, there's flooding. But whenever you
Mhm.
have like farm systems, it slows down the process of the water getting into the waterways and into the sewer systems, right? So it would have like just so many different beneficial effects. And I feel like that's the big point of sustainability is you're not just doing it for yourself, you're not just doing it for the future, like it works on all levels. And that's why I think it's really important. And I think you've set up a pretty great example of what someone can. I mean, you have you said that you did a lot of it with repurposed materials, and
Mhm.
obviously there's some money that you have to put into it. Like I don't even want to talk about how much money I put into my garden because I had to get all of the. I mean, most of the containers, to be fair, I just found at restaurants and like places like that. But then as things started expanding, I bought like the cloth containers, and then of course you've got to get your soil, and I use
Mhm.
fertilizer that I made, but then I was like, well, you know what? Let me just buy some fertilizer too, and all these things. It's one of those hobbies that rapidly expands in scope, like
Yeah.
before you realize it. Um, so let's quickly as we're gonna wrap up soon, but tell us about some of the things you make and how people can find the things you make and support your other types of makership, as it were.
Sure. Um, well, the only thing that I make right now that I sell is jewelry. I started silversmithing, like I was saying, during midway through the pandemic. It had been a goal of mine for a while to learn, so I got myself like a little Dremel a little butane torch. My partner likes to say it's like a glorified lighter, and I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and I learned how to do it. So I've been doing that, and my business name is Elytra Studio, which is Elytra. The elytra is actually the name for the protective hard shell that's over a beetle's wings.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's where the name came from because I'm really into beetles.
Hmm.
Is one of the things I'm really interested in. Um, it's a long list, but I was I was really in a beetle mood when I started it, and I like I think there's some interesting corollaries with like self decoration and thinking about really beautiful creatures in nature. But
Oh yeah.
um, so that's where that name came from. Yeah, I
What's
mean,
your
I have
at?
a I oh, it's at Elytra Studio. Yeah, Elytra Studio, and I have an Instagram for my drone flying, but I don't post. Just dynamic FPV. Dynamic with a K, because I FPV is first person view, which is the kind of drones that I build. They're the ones that if you're at all familiar, that you fly wearing goggles, so you're seeing through the camera that's on board the drone when you're
Oh,
flying
that's
it. So it's
cool.
a first person.
Yeah, I have no drone
It's really
experience, so.
cool. It's very, very cool. It's drones get a really bad rap, but there's a lot of really cool stuff about them. And I have some cool ideas for ways to implement them in other.
Hmm.
They have a lot of really important and interesting uses.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of like everything, right? You know, every tool is a
Sure,
weapon if you hold it right, as according to
sure.
Ani DeFranco. Um, well, first, give us any final thoughts that you have. Any final thoughts on growing,
Hmm.
sustainability, anything of that nature, and what you'd like the future to look like in those regards.
Okay. Well, I really liked all the stuff that you said. You were much more eloquent than I didn't have a good handle on how to talk about it, but I liked all the stuff you said about sustainability. I mean, I'm trying all the time to think about ways to make my life and my family a little bit like just little moves in a more sustainable direction and more like self-contained.
Yeah.
Um, we have this land up here that we were just like one of the reasons we moved to Nevada is there's a lot of these like open spaces and we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have we build a lot of big things, so we want to have a big shop. We want to have a shop for that eventually, but I don't know. I think about a lot of alternative sort of structures for how we might build out this property over time to be like an asset for our community. Just whether it's the greater community or just like the smaller community of the people that are like our friends and our family. And wow, I feel like I should have something better to say.
No, no,
Um,
you should not. Whatever. It is clearly something that you're still thinking about, right? And that's the most
it is
important thing. That's the most important thing. You don't need
right.
a plan. You don't need a whole solid plan. Just the fact that you're thinking about doing that and that you have already
We're
like
moving in those
the
directions.
yeah, the reason that I wanted that I asked you to talk about this is because I want like this was your first year growing things and you were able to
Yeah,
do so much, right? And like that
yeah,
to me
yeah. It was
is
crazy.
yeah, it's like that's the most important thing is that people just need to understand like you don't, being a farmer is not some sort of far off thing. Growing your own food is not
Yeah,
some sort of unattainable goal, right? Even if you live in a city and you have like
yeah,
two little containers, like you should be growing some food.
yeah.
Like connect with nature and take
Mhm.
control back of also like your health. There's just nothing more gratifying
Yes.
than like eating something that you grew. It's like, you know,
It is. It's awesome. And a lot of plants you like would be really surprised, I think, by how much food like one little plant can produce.
oh yeah.
Like that was one of the things that I found really pretty amazing is just like some of the some of the plants that we had, it's like just unreal how much food we put like some of the smaller tomatoes that I had or like one that comes to my mind is my like shishito pepper plant.
Hmm.
I like picked so many freaking shishito peppers off of this one plant all summer. Like I would go out and pick like 30 shishito peppers. And then I'd go out 2 days later and pick like 20. And then be like,
Wow.
just like the production level of some of these plants is amazing.
That's
So
awesome.
I think it is important. Like, I guess with me saying, oh, we had this like huge hoop house and we had like a bazillion plants, like you don't have to do all that. Like you were saying, like you could have a lot of success with a lot of small things. I guess the biggest like takeaway that I personally had from my personal situation is, like I said, like infrastructure for us was so huge and it was really worth making that initial investment. And we were able to do that not because like we have a ton of money, especially not this year, because we really didn't. This year was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really terrible year
Hell
for
yeah.
us financially. But what we did do is, source a lot of discarded materials, which is something we just are really into doing for everything. Um, a big dream of ours is to like build a house on our property, like with our own two hands, but we're that kind of people. I know that's not like everybody's bag, but we want to build
Sounds
it all
awesome.
out of reclaimed stuff. And we have a pile. We have this huge boneyard now of like just stuff that we collect whenever people are like getting rid of a material that we feel like we can use to build. Like we have 20 chairlift towers in our yard. Like they're like 24-inch round, like because one of the ski resorts in Tahoe was taking down the chairlift. So my partner like organized with them that
That's
we could
awesome.
get those. That's a pretty extreme example, right? Like not everybody's going to be able to like go pick up 20 giant trailer trailers,
No, but
but
still, yeah.
it actually took like 2 weeks of schlepping them because we could only bring like two at a time,
Yeah.
from Tahoe. But we're going to use them as the columns, like the vertical supports for when we build a metal shop on our property for doing like metal fabrication, which is a plan that hopefully will happen in 2021. We'll see. Cross your fingers for us. But
Hell yeah.
um, but yeah, there's so much stuff being thrown away all the time, and there's people getting rid of stuff all the time, and also there's like an endless wealth of information available to us now with the internet, and people want to help people want to help you learn things too. So anything you like see somebody doing that you want to do, like I always have people say to me, they're like, oh, I wish I was good at whatever, insert the thing that I personally do. That's something that I get all the time. It's like I wish I could do that. And I'm
Yeah.
always like, literally the only difference probably between me and you is like that I've watched 20 hours of YouTube videos about this, like
Right, right.
that's it. I'm not like ha, there's no like
Yeah.
magic thing. It's like the information's out there if you just want to go find it. So just like figure out what it is that you want to do. Just go do it.
That is, I love that, and I totally agree. And I think that is as good a place as any to end. So thank you so much for being on the show. It's much appreciated.
Well,
Um,
thanks for me.
and thank you all for listening and watching. I am Logan Grendel. You can find me online on Instagram at Focused on Infinity. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Focus on Infinity. And please do support my Patreon so I can continue building more and better things. I'm working on no fewer than 5 different various projects. I'll have an EP coming out. I have a graphic novel coming out. I have just a bunch of stuff coming down the pipe. And yeah, I would appreciate your support doing that. And so I'm going to say goodbye for now. And Alysia, you should hang on. I'm going to just get rid of everybody else. And for everybody else, keep wearing your masks. COVID's not going away, and now we have this more virulent strain going on. Like, it's not a joke, and things are gonna get real fucking dark around here. And hopefully the new administration will help somewhat, but we can't count on them. We can't count on anyone, and it's just up to us. And I think that's the other overarching message of the things we've been talking about today, is that sustainability is just about it's mutual aid, it's dual power, it's taking care of each other, taking care of ourselves and the world around us in ways that don't have anything to do with who's in office, and is something that we should just do for the rest of our lives. So thank you again. Much love. Grendel out.